The afternoon sun burned fiercely above the narrow streets of Lahore, casting long, trembling shadows across the cracked pavement. The air shimmered with heat, and the city buzzed with its usual chaos, vendors shouting, children laughing, horns blaring, the rhythm of life pulsing through every alley. But amid all that noise, a scream tore through the air, sharp, desperate, and full of fear. It came from an old woman clutching a worn-out handbag as two masked men on a motorbike skidded to a stop beside her. The world around her seemed to freeze in that single, terrifying instant. The gun flashed. Her body trembled. The bag, all she had left of a lifetime of memories and survival, was ripped from her frail hands. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of good people to rise against cruelty, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to KindHeartsHub, because stories like this remind us that compassion still beats in the heart of this world. Her name was Sakina Bibi, a 72-year-old widow who lived alone in a crumbling two-room house at the corner of a quiet street in Marzang. She had seen enough winters to know that the world could be cruel, but she had also seen enough kindness to never lose faith in people. Every morning, she would dress neatly in her faded white shawl, pick up her small handbag, and walk to the nearby market to sell homemade pickles and embroidered handkerchiefs. It wasn't much, but it gave her dignity, a sense of purpose. Inside that little bag were her entire day's earnings, her old identification card, and a photograph of her late husband, folded neatly between the rupees. That day, as she walked back home under the relentless sun, her body aching but her spirit steady, she didn't notice the two young men watching her from a distance. They saw not a human being, but an opportunity, an easy target, a quick payday. When they struck, she screamed not just out of fear but from heartbreak. The bag was more than cloth and thread. It held her life, the photo, the little money for her medicines, her hope for tomorrow. When the bike sped away, leaving her trembling on the side of the road, she fell to her knees. The world around her didn't stop. People stared but didn't move. Some whispered, some looked away, and in that moment, she realized how invisible she had become. But fate has a strange way of listening when injustice cries too loudly. Just 2 blocks away, 3 bikers sat under the shade of a large banyan tree, young men in their 20s. Friends who called themselves the Street Brothers. They weren't rich or powerful, but they had hearts that still flinched at cruelty. They had grown up in the same neighborhood, had seen poverty and pain up close, and knew what it meant to be ignored. When they heard Sakina's scream pierce the afternoon air, they didn't think twice. Their engines roared to life, and they sped off in the direction of the fading sound of tires and terror. One of them, Hamza, caught a glimpse of the black bike turning sharply at the corner near the old mosque. His adrenaline surged. There, he shouted, though no one could hear him over the roar of engines. The 3 of them split, one circling around to block the main road, the other accelerating to catch up. The chase cut through narrow alleys, through the dust and chaos of the city. The robbers weaved dangerously, but the Street Brothers knew these streets better than anyone. They had raced through them 1,000 times before, only this time, it wasn't for fun. It was for something that mattered. As they closed in, one of the thieves turned his head, realizing they were being followed. He waved the gun wildly in the air, shouting threats that disappeared into the noise. But Hamza didn't slow down. He leaned forward, eyes locked on the thief's license plate. His friend Bilal came up from the side and threw a small rock toward the bike. It hit the rear wheel just as they took a sharp turn, and in an instant, the robbers lost control. The bike screeched, skidded, and crashed into the wall of an abandoned shop. Dust and shouts filled the air. Hamza jumped off his bike before it even stopped moving. He ran to the fallen men. The gun clattered across the road. One of the thieves tried to crawl away, clutching the stolen bag, but Hamza grabbed it from his hands and shouted for help. Within moments, a small crowd gathered, men from the nearby workshops, shopkeepers, and passers-by who had seen what happened. The anger in the air was thick, electric. The robbers were pinned down. Their arrogance melted into fear. For once, justice didn't wait for paperwork. It came riding on 2 wheels and a sense of duty. Back where it all began, Sakina Bibi sat trembling on the roadside, her heart heavy and eyes wet. She didn't know that help was already on its way. Minutes later, she saw the familiar sight of 3 young bikers approaching, one holding her handbag in his hands. Hamza stopped in front of her, his breathing heavy, face glistening with sweat and dust. "Amma," he said softly, placing the bag into her shaking hands. No one should ever be made to feel unsafe in their own street. Tears filled Sakina's eyes. She clutched the bag to her chest, unable to find words. She looked at the young men strangers a few minutes ago, now heroes who had restored her faith in humanity. She reached out her trembling hands and placed them on Hamza's head, a silent blessing, a prayer for his safety. Around them, the crowd that had once looked away now stood in awe. Someone recorded the moment on their phone not to chase views, but because it was rare to see goodness so raw, so real, in a world that often feels too cold. The police arrived soon after, handcuffing the robbers and taking them away. The officers praised the street brothers for their courage, but the young men didn't stay to bask in glory. They simply nodded, smiled at Sakina Bib, "I won last time," and rode away. To them, it wasn't heroism, it was humanity. That night, as Sakina sat by the small window of her house, the city lights flickering like stars beyond the smog, she opened her handbag again. Everything was there: her money, her photograph, her little notebook. She pulled out her late husband's picture and whispered through tears, "They were like our sons, weren't they?" And in the silence that followed, she felt a peace she hadn't known in years. Somewhere out there, good people still existed, people who listened to the cries of strangers and acted when it mattered. Days later, the video of the rescue began to spread across social media. People everywhere were moved not just by the bravery of the bikers, but by the tenderness in the old woman's eyes when she blessed them. Comments poured in, prayers flooded the page, and for a moment, the internet, often a place of anger and division, became a place of love. The street brothers were invited to speak at a community event, where they stood awkwardly on stage, shy and humble, insisting they weren't heroes. They said they just did what anyone should do, but deep down, they knew not everyone would. Weeks passed, but Sakina never forgot that day. Every morning, as she sold her pickles and handkerchiefs, she would glance at the street corner where it all happened. Sometimes, she would see Hamza ride by, flashing a quick smile or stopping for a chat. She started keeping a jar of sweets for him and his friends. The bond between them grew, a bond born not of blood, but of kindness. In her heart, she had adopted 3 new sons, and so, the story of the elderly woman and the bikers became more than just a viral moment. It became a symbol, a reminder that courage doesn't always wear a uniform, and justice doesn't always wait for permission. Sometimes it comes roaring down the street, driven by people who refuse to look away when someone cries for help. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe again in the quiet goodness that still exists in this world, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. Subscribe to KindHeartsHub so we can continue sharing real stories that remind us all. Kindness is the greatest power we have, and before we end, we'd love to hear from you. Would you have done what those bikers did if you were there that day? Comment below and let us know, because your words might just inspire the next act of courage in someone else's heart.